And welcome to all of you, really. It's lovely having you with us. My name is Judith Pucci. I am a Tribute Center walking tour guide. And this afternoon, you are going to hear stories told to you by two of my fellow guides. You will hear that these stories go beyond the historic events of September 11th, events that touched and changed the way all of us live. And instead, they explore the personal costs of that day. So let me introduce you to, next to me is Peter Rinaldi, and next to Peter is Delores Hurley. Delores, who is really known far and wide as Cookie, works for Morgan Stanley. She has been with financial services firm for over 20 years. Morgan Stanley was the biggest tenant in the World Trade Center. It occupied over 20 floors in the South Tower, and it had about 3,000 employees. Now, the South Tower was the building that was hit second. Peter was the assistant director of engineering for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The Port Authority, among other things, is the organization that manages the World Trade Center. They are also the people who are overseeing all of the new construction that is going on outside. Peter worked in the North Tower, the first building to be attacked. We're going to begin with Delores, so let me just set the scene for you. When the first plane hit the North Tower, Delores was at her desk on the 64th floor of the second building. So her building is not yet attacked. She now, like thousands of other people, though, are in a position to make a crucial decision. And the decision is basically, do I stay in my building, which has not been attacked, or do I leave? And I'll let Delores take it from there. Cookie.
Well, on September 11th, 2001, I sat on the stairs of the 25th floor of Tower 2, and I knew I was going to die. I just didn't think it. I knew it. I knew I was gone. And I had gotten to that point because, as Judith said, I worked for Morgan Stanley, and I was on the 64th floor. That particular day, I had gotten in early to work, which was really unusual for me. And just as I was going up in the elevators, racing through to get to my desk, at that time in Tower 2, you had you have two badges to show. You had to go into the elevator from the first to the 44th floor. Then you had to run and switch to the next elevator, which was going to take you up to the higher floors. I got to my desk at the 64th floor, and we were in the southwest corner. I threw my bag down on my desk. I was all ready to start the day because you have to know I loved working there. I just loved my job. With that, I was talking to my boss, and one of my coworkers started yelling, "Whoa, whoa, what's going on? What is that? What is that?" And he said, "Look, look, look." And we turned around to look towards where he was standing in front of the windows. And first, I didn't know what to make of it. I saw, coming from Tower 1, I saw fireballs of papers just flying all over, and then there was a desk on fire coming towards our building. It seemed like it was going to hit us, but you don't realize how far away these things really are. I saw chairs flying out the windows, and this is in a matter of, this is seconds. And my boss at the time, who had been in the 93 bombing, she just screamed, "Out, everybody out." We didn't even think twice. We didn't. Grabbed my bag, we ran right to the stairwell. And to this day, I thank the head of our security because, whereas up until that time we used to curse him because we had so many fire drills it wasn't funny. And it seemed like every single week we were having a fire drill. But he kept pushing home, "Don't hit the elevator, go right to the stairwell. This is your stairwell, get down it and get out." And it was an automatic thing by then. Grabbed our stuff, went, hit the stairwell. We really didn't know what was going on because you couldn't hear too much in the stairwells. I started going down the steps really slow because before that, a few months before, I had had foot surgery, and I just couldn't put too much pressure on it. I couldn't like run too fast, plus the fact I really wasn't a lightweight at the time either. So I'm going down slow. As we're getting down a few flights, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I got 64 to go. Am I gonna do this? So here I am, one step at a time going down the stairs. And there is a stairwell here that you can see outside in the museum. There's only room for 2 people side by side. And I'm holding onto the banister one step at a time. And then as the flight started to go, people started to get a little more anxious. I guess maybe the only thing I can think of is people further up. In retrospect, I think that maybe they heard what the news was and they started running down. So here's people start to yell, move faster, go, 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 go. And people on the left side were kind of racing, pushing, shoving to get out. And when that started happening, one of my coworkers, John, who I worked with for many, many years, he started yelling, Cookie, Cookie, I'll stand behind you. So nobody, pushes you, knocks you down. And at the same time, one of the guys I had just met, a young fella, his name was Greg, and he said, well, I'll stand in front of you. The 2 of us will protect her going down till we get out. And, it was odd. I thought it was odd because I really didn't know Greg that well. I had only recently met him because his wife just had a baby. And I brought in a gift for him, and that's how we actually met, probably just a few months before that. So here we start down the stairs again. Greg's in front of me. John's in back of me, and John's got this big, loud voice, and he starts yelling behind him up the stairs, slow people to the right, fast to the left. So that started to work, and our area, the right side was going down a little bit slower. As we kept going, at the top of each stairwell, when you looked down the stairwell and you looked at the wall, you could see the number floor you were at. And I'm looking, and I said, oh boy, it's 50. And I keep going, and I says, oh, thank God, this is 44, because this is where the split is, that, well, maybe I can hop the elevator and I don't have to walk all the way down. And we hear when somebody opened the door from the stairwell to go in on this 44th floor lobby, and you could hear over the loudspeakers, go back to your desk, you're safer in the desk, the lobby the plaza is just too bad, too much debris, whatever. By this time, we still didn't know what had happened. The news started to trickle down the stairs that a plane, and we're thinking, some idiot with a little plane hit the towers. And so here we are with hearing the loudspeakers coming over, go back to your desk, don't take the elevator up if you want, because by this time, this was the time now, only one had been hit, and they felt it was safer for us to be inside rather than be out in the plaza where there might be debris or fires going on. And of course, we knew as, being in New York, there was going to be 50 million cop cars, fire department trucks, ambulance. They were going to be so loaded out there, we'd never even be able to walk through the crowd. So we thought about it. And then after that loudspeaker notice, we hear over a megaphone the head of our security. His name is Rick Riscorla. And he's got a megaphone. He's standing on the 44th floor, and he's yelling, Morgan Stanley, get out, don't stay, don't listen, get out, Morgan Stanley, get out. And he just kept saying that over and over and over. And, I looked at John, I looked at Greg, and I said, oh, well, John said, well, what do you want to do? You want to go back? Or I said, John, what's the worst thing that can happen? We go downstairs, I get coffee, I sit, have a cigarette, we'll go have lunch, go to O'Hara's. And he said, oh, that sounds pretty good to me. So we kept walking, still not knowing what had actually gone on outside. Finally, keep walking, get to 30, and I see the numbers going down a bit. This time my leg's starting to feel a little numb, But it kept going slow, and John and Greg said, no, keep going, we'll be fine, we'll get out, we'll hang out with you, we'll find your seat. And I top of the stairs, and I'm looking down, I see 25, and I says, oh, geez, I still got another 25 to go. And with that, after looking at the number 25, we feel this shaking, this was just a boom, and we didn't know what the heck happened, but it only took about 10 or 15 seconds. Fortunately for me, I was holding on to the banister because the building swayed. You heard this loud boom, and then everything went silent, like you were in an echo or something, and you couldn't hear anything. You were deaf for the moment. For those few seconds, you couldn't hear nothing. And I'm holding on, and that building swayed so much, I swear it swayed at least 5 feet, because my head touched the wall on the other side of the stairwell. I know it swayed that much. I never forget it. So it swayed back and forth. I'm still holding on, back and forth again, and then finally it just kind of wobbled, and it stood still. And I said, oh, geez. And by this time, I sat down, and I said, I don't know what happened. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what happened, but it was really bad, because at that point, when we were swaying back and forth, the people were flying over my head. Could see them hitting the wall of the next stairwell, flying down the stairs, jumping, tripping over me, and it was just like this big collision of people down the stairwell. And I just sat there, and I said, this is it for me. And Greg is down at the bottom of the stairwell. John's behind me, and he's yelling, Cook, we gotta go, we gotta go. I said, John, I just can't. My legs just gave out. I can't even feel my foot anymore. And John is yelling at me, Cook, we gotta go. And he's trying to push me and get me up. And I said, John, I can't look. And Greg is down at the bottom, and he's saying, Delores, we gotta go, we gotta go. And I said, look, guys, I don't want you to lose your life to save me. I've lived long enough. I've had it pretty good. And down at the bottom, Greg looked up at me, and he said, you know, and I don't even know why he screamed this, but he said, you know, my mother's name is Delores, and if she ever finds out that I left you, she'd kill me, so you better go now. And it was in those seconds that I started to think about my own family, and I know it sounds awful, but I was thinking about what my kids were going to say about me at my funeral, because in those few seconds, so many things just run through your head. And I started thinking that, you know, I had 3 sons and a daughter, and they were going to be telling everybody, oh, we know Mommy fought to the last minute. She's a trooper, and she's a tough old bird, and if anybody tried their best, it was going to be her. And it was kind of like, after I thought that, I thought to myself, you know what, I can't make a liar out of my kids. So I pulled my butt up off the stairs, and John's going, oh, thank God. And Greg is yelling, come on, we'll go. And I just thought to myself, I got pain, but I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care. I'm just going to not think about it. And, you know, as I was going down that first stairwell, it was really hard to bend my legs. And I started thinking, you know what, Cookie, you've came through worse than this before. You know, your husband lost a job. You had 4 kids. You had nothing. You didn't have nothing. You were homeless. You had a fire in the house. You didn't have nothing. And you bounced back from everything. You can do this. You can do this. So I talked myself into it. And finally, we get down to the bottom floor, and security is ushering us out into the plaza, the main plaza. Now, remember, we still didn't know anything of what was happening. As we're going to the plaza, we hear these loud thuds coming down. They were booms, loud booms. And I turned to John, and I said, Jesus, maybe one fell over on us, and all the pieces are just falling in there. So here's security now. They said, you got to go back. You got to go back. And we looked at each other. We were ready to kill this guy. And we had to walk back onto the building where all the stores were. And we had to walk out on the other side, which was Church and Vesey, where Borders bookstore was. That was how they were getting us out. So as we're going through the lobby passageway, then you start to see smoke. It was getting hot, a lot of smoke. Fortunately for us, the firemen had come in and they crashed through all the revolving doors, because can you imagine, you know, thousands of people trying to get through 15 revolving doors? It wasn't going to happen. So the firemen went before us, and they just lined up and start crashing through all the revolving doors so you could just step through. it was at this point my leg buckled. And, you know, I wasn't even crying. I wasn't even upset because I thought to myself, I'm going to crawl if I have to. And John and Greg, they lifted me up onto my arms, and they just lifted me because from, I guess it would be about equivalent of maybe a half a block to walk to get out. And they were carrying me, and this big old fireman comes by, and he said, "You fellas need any help?" And they looked, "Yes, we do." And because the fireman just lifted me and carried me through the passageway, and by this time you really couldn't see too much in front of you. He set me down at the bottom of the escalator, which was up through borders, and I looked up and I could see daylight, and I said to John said to me, he says, "Can you do it?" I said, "You're damn right I can do it." I said, "One more and I'm out." Saw daylight as we expected. There was pandemonium all around everything. We still didn't know what had happened. And fortunately for us, Morgan Stanley security had drained in us where our muster point was, where we were all going to meet so that they could take an attendance and make sure everybody was there. And John and Greg, they said, "Well, hey, we want to get a ride downtown, so let's go put you in the ambulance and we'll take you." And I just turned and I said, "No freaking way. There's no way. I want to get as far away from here as possible." And we did. We walked to our muster point. The next day, we come to find out that ambulance was under the rubble. So not only did these guys save me, but in some weird way, I saved them too. That's the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
We'll do a Q&A at the end. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Vicki. Well, Cookie gave you a very good sense of what it was like to be in those buildings. Peter's story is going to focus more on what came next. And what came next was a massive recovery and cleanup period. It lasted just shy of 9 months. And Peter was assigned to the engineering team responsible for supervising the clearing away of 1.8 million tons of debris.
Thank you. Hi. What I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about what it was like to be here in the aftermath of 9/11. And also maybe, as I tell you that story, give you a little insight to one of the artifacts and how it came about down in the museum down below, the last column if you haven't been down there. So my office was in Tower 1 on the 72nd floor. I worked in that building since the building opened as a young engineer and became an older engineer as time went on. But on that Friday, September 7th, before 9/11, I was in my office and I was finishing up a rather large engineering project. And I was getting ready to leave my office, and happily I was going on a 2-week vacation, a well-deserved and wanted vacation with my wife. We were going to go to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, nice beaches down there and stuff. So as I was just finishing up my desk on that Friday afternoon, the phone rang, and it was a fellow named Steve Fiorelli, a friend of mine, coworker. You know, you work with people 20, 25 years. You probably spend more time in an office with people than sometimes you do with your family. You know, what you think about it. So you eat lunch, you share stories. So Steve was a coworker in another department that I work closely with, and he said, "Hey, Pete, I hear you're going on vacation. I just wanted to wish you well." I said, "Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll see you then." He said, "Okay, I'll see you then." I never saw Steve again. So I'm on vacation. It's a Tuesday. My son calls me and says, "Planes hit the building. There's a plane hit the building." I look at it. I said, "Jesus, look at this." Then I watched the events unfold like many of you did. So I came back to New York a few days later, and I actually came back, and because of certain aspects of the initial recovery, several of my friends' bodies were found right away. So I spent my first few days back going to wakes and funerals, including the funeral of Steve Fiorelli, by the way. They almost made it out of the building. So after doing that, I got called into the chief engineer's office at the Port Authority, and I said, we're going to send you down to ground zero to the emergency team. Down there, they need some help. They need some engineering assistance because you know the building, you know the underground. They need someone to help lead up that effort. So I left Jersey City, where we had temporary offices, thinking I was going to a meeting for an hour. I didn't get back to that office for 4 days before I got back to just clean out and take my stuff with me. When I got here at the site, I got it fitted with a respirator. We're talking just days, maybe a week after the collapse of the building. And first thing I did was I walked around what used to be a building that I worked in for so many years, and where all my friends, 84 of my friends and coworkers, lost their lives. You've seen pictures, you may have seen it on TV, but nothing can replace your senses of sight, hearing, smell, the 3D visualization. As I walked around what used to be a vibrant World Trade Center where 2,743 people lost their lives. There were fires burning, there were people scrambling on piles. Buildings, portions of the buildings were standing 250, 300 feet in the air of the towers. There was a pile of burning rubble, at least 100 feet, 30 meters for those of you from outside the US, burning rubble. It was just incredible. The smoke and the smell, that acrid smell, I've never forgotten it. The air, pungent, stayed with us for months as the fires burned. I developed what was called, we called it the World Trade Center cough. After 6 weeks, you just of inhaling that. You wore a respirator, but still, it's the pungent smell. So we set about the task of providing technical assistance to the firemen and police that were doing the search. In the first week or two we were there, it was actually a search and rescue effort. After that, it became a recovery effort. Recovery meant we were looking for the remains of people that perished. It was unbelievable in terms of the site and what went on. It was 24/7. It never shut down. It was, I say, a week on this site was like being a month anywhere else. That's how it, you left for a day, you came back, it was like a week passed. Actually I never left. I lived in a temporary apartment downtown. I stayed here, I was here full time. Many of us were. We gave up our lives for a period of time, actually. We just kind of set things aside. It was an emotional time. People were so driven about wanting to do the right thing. It was incredible. The camaraderie, the feeling. In such tragedy, people came together to want to be able to help. Not only us on the pile, as we called, but also people from around the country that came to volunteer. People from all over that were part of the Salvation Army, the Red Cross. They were there to help. They couldn't be on the site, but they provided comfort stations for us, food, water. Some of the best restaurants in the city sent food down. For those of you who were tourists and paying for all of that, we had free food, We had all that food, so much food that I lost 15 pounds. Put it back. But it was just walking around, the stress, you didn't sleep well, everything that was, I wasn't alone in this. There were many of us doing this. So as the months went on, the pile, as we called it, you may have seen pictures, we euphemistically called it the pile, started to transition and change, and it became the pit, as we called it. And as we went through that with the recovery and the search, after about 3 months or so, we started to think about how would all of this end? I mean, what happens at the end? We were sitting around one evening, actually at O'Hara's. A few of us, after a long, dusty, long day, it was at night, and sitting around having a beer to wash it down. Sometimes your best philosophy and thoughts are over a drink, And one of the guys said, he said, I want to take that last piece of the World Trade Center, whatever that is, I want to follow it up out of that pit, and I want to keep going. And I don't want to look back. That'll be it. So we said, yeah, that sounds about right, but what's that going to be? We didn't know. Around about March, as we were doing the search, we got into an area that was the area of Tower 2. It was an area that we couldn't get into because it was debris, and we were actually, all the equipment and personnel were over a road, a temporary road, if you would call it that, of the debris to go over that area. So in order to get into that area and search it, we had to find another way into the site. So I built a bridge, first bridge I ever built. I was a bridge engineer, but I fixed bridges. I never built a bridge, but I got to build a bridge. We built that bridge. We called it a ramp. You'll see it in some of the pictures if you go through there. And then we were able to get into this area and excavate it out in March. I'll never forget that. And it was down at such a level that it turned out it was the lobby area of Tower 2. And in the lobby area of Tower 2, we found the most bodies we found on the site in one place. And why was that? It was the area in the lobby where the police and fire were assembling and people were coming out of the building in the lobby. And when the buildings came down and crushed, they crushed a lot of first responders and people that were there in that area assembling. So we had a unwritten kind of understanding on the site. We might get a little emotional, I'm sorry about this. It's still fresh in my mind even after 14 years. We had a kind of understanding that, you know, if you found a body on the site, we didn't find that many bodies. People were just totally annihilated in this tragic event. But if you did, all work stopped on the site. That person was wrapped in an American flag, put on a gurney. The chaplain was called. Chaplain on duty, may have been a chaplain, a priest, a rabbi, whoever was on duty, came down. And 6 people picked up that gurney and carried it out of the site behind the chaplain, onto an ambulance, and then to the morgue. If it was a fireman or a police officer that was found, it was 6 of his brothers, 6 firemen or 6 policemen that carried him out. If it was a civilian, like you or I, it was one of us on that gurney that carried the person out. So I remember it was April 11th, 2002. 7 months to the day, we found the last person, the last body on the site. It was a woman. I was down on the site. I said, hey, Pete, would you be part of the honor guard? So myself and 5 other workers, we carried that woman out. I was thinking, as I carried that woman out, it's a sobering thought when you carry a body, let me tell you. And I was saying, boy, this is someone's mother. This person got up to go to work. It's someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's sister. They're never coming home. You want to know what Line 11 was all about? You carry a body out of the hole. You know what the whole thing is about. Not this museum, not this memorial. That's what it was about. Well, we labored on. We got to the end. But during that time, as I said, in that area of Tower 2, and I'll tell you a little side story, as we excavated down, one of the columns that was there peeked through the rubble. And it was right in the corner of what used to be the lobby of Tower 2 in there, right where the elevators were. And one day, someone put some flowers there. Someone put a candle there. Someone wrote someone's name there. And as we excavated down, some more people wrote on there. And we looked at that and we said, that's going to be the last piece of Trade Center we take out. And that's how the last column came about. So what you see downstairs in the last column with all the writing on it was done as it excavated down and people put writing or hung pictures of the firemen and loved ones lost. And finally, when we got down to the very end in May, the end of May, we were at the end of what was the recovery operation for us. We had removed that 1.8 million tons of debris. We searched for everyone. Tried to find the remains, and we were done. And it was on the night of May 28th, and that evening, that about over 1,000 of us that had been working at the site came back that evening, and we actually took the last column that was standing there, and we cut it down, and we put it on a large gurney for a bigger ceremony that the mayor's office and the politicians were going to have 2 days later. And leaving the site, as we so many times talked about, all along that ramp that I had built were police and firemen saluting us because we had helped them in that whole time, during that time. And we marched off and we were out at the site, and that was the end of the recovery. So, you know, in the events of 9/11 and the terrorist attack, you know, we all saw some of the worst of what mankind can do. but in the response and the people that I work with and the people on that ramp, we saw the best in what mankind can do. And the best of the best were on that ramp that night. Thank you very much for listening.